Hey, what's up? It's me, JDS4696, and today I'm going to be giving a film review for Spider-Man 3. And as you can see, this is the version I had of it. It was like the 3 disc deluxe edition, widescreen edition. So you was actually able to pull it out, and it had the actual like DVD of it. You see, I didn't have the Blu-ray, where I had the DVD version of it. As you can see, I always thought that poster was cool. So yeah, this is my review for Spider-Man 3, and I know like a lot of like fans and critics, they kind of complain about this one to a certain extent, but I still thought this was an enjoyable film, and it concludes like the Sam Raimi directed films, that had like Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker Spider-Man and Kirsten Dunst as like Mary Jane, and then you had James Franco as Harry Osborn. They still had those same three around, but then you have like a new cast of like characters who are introduced to as well. But you also had like Rosemary Harris returning as Aunt May. You had J.K. Simmons returning as J. Jonah Jameson. Yeah, man, J. Jonah Jameson. I don't know how I made that mistake though. But yeah, you had them like returning to complete like the trilogy, which I always thought was cool. And then you had Danny Elfman, who was still like providing like the musical score for like the film as well, like the soundtrack of the film, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, actually, yeah, I think the music did change to a certain extent. I'm not sure if well, the film, it picks up, that's why I always thought was cool about the Spider-Man films. It picks up right after the events of Spider-Man 2. Well, not necessarily right after, but like kind of like months after Spider-Man 2 there. Like things have gotten better for Peter Parker, like his grades have continued to be like good and improve, his relationship with Mary Jane is like excellent, they're actually about to get married too and stuff like that. And then you have like even like his heroic deeds as Spider-Man are like just truly excellent. Like the city of New York, they really look upon Spider-Man as like a great hero who always like is there for people in the city, he helps save the city and stuff like that. But at the same time, you have like Harry Osborn, who is still actually upset with Peter Parker, because he knows about Peter Parker's like hidden identity as Spider-Man. Not spoilers, he knows about him being Spider-Man, so he still believes that Spider-Man actually killed his father, in the first film. So he still has like this grudge against Spider-Man, and Peter Parker as general. So at one point, like the film, like after all these kind of events are introduced, what's going on in the currently in this last film of the Spider-Man trilogy, what Sam Raimi director was. This alien like ooze, it crash lands, well, not necessarily crash, but it arrives on Earth like in this meteorite form, like this asteroid like form. It just lands on Earth. So that was one of like the flaws of the film. They never explain where the meteorite came from, why did it just show up on Earth. But this is like a comic book based film, so it's kind of like understandable. You can kind of see something like that happening. But it turns out that this alien like ooze stuff that shows up, like this black ooze, it turns out to be like one of like it becomes, of course, like the Venom symbiote, basically, which I'll touch on all that. He was always my favorite villain of Spider-Man, as far as Spider-Man, like comic books, whatever, he was always my favorite villain of Spider-Man, kind of a lot of people like Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus and so on, but Venom was always my favorite, so I always like prefer as far as like Spider-Man villains. And I know he's kind of similar to like Bane to a certain, well, Bane was actually similar to him, But yeah, after the alien ooze arrives on Earth, they're never explained it, but somehow it manages to get attached to like Peter Parker's motorcycle when he's out with Mary Jane. They're having like a little date, like in like a park or something like that. They never explain where they really were. That's when the ooze manages to get on his motorcycle, but he doesn't know it at the time. But eventually, he goes and see like Aunt May, I think, at one point in the film. But then he is confronted by this new goblin-looking type enemy, and it does turn out that it is like Harry as this so-called new goblin. I think that's what he was calling it at the time, the new goblin. It's not necessarily the green goblin, but it's like the new goblin. Because when I was actually reading the comic books at the time, Harry Osborn was the green goblin when I was reading, but his goblin actually looked like how Norman Osborn's goblin looked, But in this film, they call it, I think, the new goblin, if I'm not mistaken. But he has a confrontation with Spider-Man, and then that's when he reveals himself and they're fighting and stuff like that. And it's not really Spider-Man, it's actually Peter Parker that he's fighting at this point. I always thought that was kind of cool, in the film. that you actually get to see like Peter Parker himself, you know, like shooting webs and swinging around and stuff. I always thought that was cool because they did have moments like that in the comic books, you know, or like, you know, as far as like the Spider-Man comics go as well, you know. Now at the same time, you have like like this escaped convict known as Flint Marko, and he has just recently, I think, escaped from prison, and he goes home to see his daughter, who is somehow like sick for because of I forgot what her condition was, but she's actually sick. So at one point, after he visits her, like the wife, well, you know, like the girl's mother doesn't want Flint Marko there because he's a criminal, you know. He's known for like robbing and stealing, like that. Even at one point killing, you know. It's like a little plot twist in the film, like with one of the people he supposedly had killed, you know, that's related to Peter Parker basically. But yeah, he leaves, you know. But then he's like later on, you know, like they don't show exactly where he's at, but he's like running from the cops, and he goes into like this like sealed off facility, and he falls into like this like spinning like reactor thing, you know, and it somehow transforms all his molecules like in his body into like sand, so he basically becomes like sand, you know, so he can like transform and shape shift and stuff like that, you know. He can form like objects with his hand. He's basically made of sand at one point, which I thought was always cool, you know. He's like a very popular villain of like Spider-Man, you know. So yeah, and also you have like another plot thing going on for like this new photographer. He's Eddie Brock, you know, and he's working for the Daily Bugle, and he kind of has this him and Peter Parker have like this kind of like I guess you could say this like contest going on, who's like the better photographer and stuff like that, you know. And he's also dating Gwen Stacy, and you know Gwen Stacy in the comic books was actually like Peter Parker's first like true love, you know. It was like a tragic conflict with her in the comic books, you know, but they didn't touch on that in like the Sam Raimi films, you know. They had her basically with Eddie Brock in his film, which kind of threw off like the comic mythos, you know. So yeah, he's actually like dating Gwen Stacy in this film, but he has like him and Peter Parker have like this thing about who's like the better photographer, you know, as they're working for J. Jonah Jameson, you know. So I thought that was kind of okay, you know, and that was how it was in the comic books. Like Eddie Brock and Peter Parker did have like this rivalry, you know. So at one point, Eddie Brock actually loses his job, like, you know, because of a conflict with Peter Parker. Like Peter Parker frames him for saying the pictures that he created were fake, or whatever. The pictures that he took with Spider-Man were fake. So Eddie Brock loses his job at one point. Then he has like a grudge, just like the comic books, and he developed this grudge against like Peter Parker, you know. And eventually, I'll touch on all that kind of later on, you know. But it turns out that it was like later on, it turns out that Flint Marko is actually the one that killed Uncle Ben, you know, supposed to kill him, but I'm not going to spoil it, you know. So Peter Parker learns about this, you know, and then after all that, once he learns that, things start falling apart with Mary Jane, because she sees him kissing like Gwen Stacy at this like parade thing that was celebrating Spider-Man. She actually sees Gwen Stacy kiss Spider-Man, you know. Well, actually, Peter Parker underneath, you know, Gwen Stacy lifted his mask up, very similar to like the scene on the first Spider-Man where Kirsten Dunst, where Mary Jane kissed like Peter Parker in the ring, like she lifted his mask up. It's very like similar to that, you know. So she's kind of like mad about that. And then at the same time, you know, like Peter Parker, like their relationship starts to fall apart because of that situation. And at the same time, he learns that his Uncle Ben was actually killed by Flint Marko, and not the thief that he thought, you know, that had killed his father. I mean, his uncle, you know, wasn't really the thief that did it, you know. Turns out it was this guy that has become the Sandman. So eventually, like, Sandman is introduced at one point in the film, and it was like right after the parade sequence, he shows up, you know, and he's like attacking. He tries to steal like his money truck, whatever, and that's when Spider-Man shows up and tries to stop him and stuff like that, you know. Very cool sequence too, as well, you know. But yeah, this film, that's what was going on basically, you know. Like you have like all these different like it's like a bunch of like plot elements, and like one dealing with like this alien ooze that they don't really explain, you know, that much, you know. It just shows up on Earth, you know, because like the true like origin of like the alien symbiote, it is kind of complicated, and it would have been kind of difficult for them to put that into one film. So that's why I believe at one point they probably should just do that over again in like another like Spider-Man film in the future. I don't know if they ever will, you know, and just give like the alien symbiote, which becomes like Venom, you know, which was bonded with Peter Parker. They should just give that its own film, you know. But in this film, like it does bond with him, and that's when he turns like kind of, you know, it kind of makes him like aggressive, like angry, almost turns Peter evil, basically, you know. Cause even like his Spider-Man suit, like when it bonds to like his Spider-Man suit, like the alien ooze, like what a symbiote basically that's what they call it, it turns like his Spider-Man suit. It turns like black, just like the comic books where he had the black suit, the black suit Spider-Man, just like that. Whereas in this film, that the actual like symbiote suit is actually different than how it looked in the comic books. Cause like in the comic books, they actually had like this white, the spider was white. Whereas in the film, they just basically just turned. You can tell it kind of was rushed to a certain sticker. They just turned it all black, but it still looked cool. But like once the symbiote takes Peter Parker over, well, his suit basically, well, him too, it makes him like mean and aggressive and kind of evil, So at one point he has to take it off, and he manages to get it off, and it's very similar to like that had happened in the comic books, where he had to like ring the bells inside the church cathedral, to get it off, because for some reason like the alien symbiote, it doesn't like loud noise, so he manages to get it off him, then it gets on like the Eddie Brock character, which turns him into Venom, and I always thought that's when the film kind of just like falls apart, and I was kind of upset, always upset about that, because I you can still tell this is really like Sandman film, and they just threw Venom in it, as an added treat, I guess, for fans like me, it was like rushed, I still feel like that, like the Venom like symbiote should get its own film, But yeah, I still thought this was like a decent film, Like you have Tobey Maguire again as Peter Parker, Spider-Man. You had Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane. You had James Franco in the role of Harry Osborn, and he becomes the new Goblin in the film. I thought that was kind of interesting and cool because it stayed true to the comics. Only thing about it, his appearance as the Goblin was different from how I looked in the comics. Then you have Thomas Hayden Church as the Sandman. Then you had Topher Grace, Flint Marko the Sandman. Then you had Topher Grace in the role of Eddie Brock, Venom. And this Eddie Brock was kind of like humorous and stuff like that. I don't recall Eddie Brock really being like that in the comics. He was kind of like serious, and he was like muscular looking too as well. And the Venom, it was kind of, I thought his Venom was okay. It was alright. It was kind of like cheesy to a certain extent, and a little too humorous for my taste. From what I expected the Venom to be. Yeah, and you also had, I thought Bryce Dallas Howard as Gwen Stacy. She was attractive, and I thought she was decent in the role of Gwen Stacy. She was cool, And then you had James Cromwell as her father, Captain Stacy. Like the father. He played a father in this film. And then you also have Cliff Robinson in his final role as Uncle Ben in this film. He did like a cameo appearance, as Uncle Ben. He did one final that was his final role, if I'm not mistaken, because he had passed after this film. But yeah, this film was it had like some I liked the chemistry between like Aunt May, who was again played by Rosemary Harris. I liked her chemistry with Peter Parker. She always gave like good elderly advice. I thought it still had good chemistry there. I thought like some of the battles, with like Peter Parker when he's fighting like the new Goblin, and he wasn't even dressed as Spider-Man. I thought that was an awesome, cool scene because Harris still had like the glider, he still had like the pumpkin bombs and stuff, but this time he had like a sword, which I thought was cool too as well. You also had like the usual appearances like from Sam Raimi's brother. I think his name is Ivan Raimi. He's also making appearances because he made appearances in the other two films too as well, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Sam did too. I think he made like cameo appearances too in them, if I'm not mistaken. I thought Kirsten Dunst was good in the role of Mary Jane, but they really are casting her as like a sex symbol. Like again, it's very strong. Like she's kissing like. Suddenly she's with Harry Osborn, and then suddenly she's with Peter Parker, and then she's back around. I'm saying cute. I'm saying you could tell they just make her seem like a sex symbol, basically. I thought the Spider-Man Sandman sequence when they first meet each other, and they was having that fight over like in the money truck and stuff. I thought that was a cool sequence. That was like the visual effects of him like shooting spider webs and stuff like that, or like web balls at Sandman. I thought that was cool too as well. Then you had like Bruce cameo. He had like the cameo appearances as usual. This time he was like in a restaurant this time. This time, which was kind of okay. Then you had Stan Lee make like another cameo appearance too as well. Then you have like the Connors character, who eventually becomes the Lizard. And I always thought they would do that with him to make him go ahead and become the Lizard in the third Spider-Man film, but they didn't. They went for like Sandman. They went with the Venom, villains. But the film had some fun action scenes, you know, that I thought was cool. But I still thought like the symbiote, they never really explained it that much. That was the downfall of it. They didn't really explain it that much. But like the actual true story, like the origin of it, you know, it was kind of complicated how they did it in the comics, you know. Plus, like I still be that like he was my favorite Spider-Man villain as a whole period, you know. So I still be that they should just give him like his own like, you know, film. If they ever did it again, they should actually like give like, you know, like just somehow manage to put that in a whole film, you know. Like him having like the black suit, you know, the symbiote suit, you know, then it becoming like Venom and stuff like that. I still be that should get like its own film, you know. Like its own like Spider-Man film, it should be all about that, you know. But with the Spider-Man like, you know, hero in it basically, you know. Now the film, it had like a nice comic book feel to it. I liked the look of Sandman, you know. I thought Thomas Hayden Church was like cool as, you know, he had like this serious, like very like masculine like look to the role, you know. And I like how they kept his true appearance, like the green striped sweater, shirt that he had on. Like in the comics, you know, I thought that was kind of cool too as well, you know. And the shape-shifted scenes with the Sandman were awesome and stuff. Like my only gripe was at the end where like Sandman became like this humongous, almost like Godzilla type size like villain, you know, and I thought it was like very cheesy. I didn't really like that part too much. But yeah, I thought this is a decent film like any of the Spider-Man film series, you know. Cause you know I did like the other ones as well, you know. I also had Spider-Man 1, and I always had these on video. I had Spider-Man 2, and yeah, this was like the third one, as you can see. And I always had all three of these, you know. But yeah, I would give a Spider-Man 3. I would give this a B minus. It's kind of on the level of the first one, but it wasn't as good as the first one, and it wasn't better. I know I gave that one a B if I'm not mistaken, so I would give this like a B minus. So yeah, this would be my review for Spider-Man 3, and I'm giving it a B minus. I thought the performances were good. It had good action scenes. The comic book feel level was just truly excellent, you know. And I recommend it for fans of Spider-Man or like Marvel comics or comic books in general, you know. And this is a JDS 4696, and this is my review for Spider-Man 3, which I'm giving a B minus. Alright.